leave the pathway how chemicals enter our kids. Why is that? Because kids play with one toy at a time, but they breathe all the chemicals from all the toys in their room. That was really an interesting study.
So how did scientists come to the conclusion that some chemicals are bad for us?
Well, sometimes it's even not the chemicals, but the toys themselves that are the problem, right? So some chemicals that we have in the toys, they can have properties that can cause health problems. We have chemicals that can, for example, lead to cancer. Other chemicals can affect our nervous system, and yet other chemicals can interfere with our hormones and so on, right? So this really depends on how we use the toys and the chemicals in them and how we get in contact with these chemicals. Well, not all chemicals are bad. Most chemicals are really good. Chemicals are, of course, everywhere. So all stuff is made of chemicals and they have many good properties. For instance, chemicals are used in our medicines. Chemicals also make our products, including the toys, how we want them. But some of the chemicals we use in our products, the problem is they also have bad properties, only some of them. They stay in the environment for a long time, which we call they are persistent. Some chemicals can accumulate in the water, so we can drink them. They can also accumulate in the food and in humans or other living organisms. And many chemicals, not all of them, but many can also lead to negative health effects. So these are the chemicals that we should be concerned about and that we should, of course, replace, if we can, by better alternatives.
That's pretty not good. Like, of course, there are microplastics in our water and food now that can't even be filtered out. But the bad thing is that chemicals are coming along with these microplastics, which makes the whole situation even worse.
Exactly.
But what does it mean if someone is at high risk, and can we get sick from playing with toys that put us in high risk?
That's a very good question that actually many people asked us. So I give two examples. When we talk about cancer, a high risk here means that one person out of 1 million can get the cancer, right? That is a high risk for cancer. For other effects, that is, neurotoxicity effects or other things, high risk means that more of the chemical reaches us, the humans, than the amount of the chemical where we see no health problems. So we see how many chemicals reach us versus what is the chemical amount that should reach us that we have no health problems. So if you compare these two things, then we can say what is a high risk and what is not a high risk. Of course, it is very unlikely that one kid can get sick by playing with a specific toy, unless you choke it, for example. But that is not due to the chemicals then. But when we look at all kids in a country or around the whole world, and if we include all the toys and other products that we have on our daily life, then we can link these chemicals in all the products and toys to the whole kids population and see what are associations between health problems and the toys we are playing with. And that's the way we can evaluate which persons are more at risk and others not.
Would you think that parents have a role to play in the toy ecosystem? And what's your advice to them if they do?
Certainly, it's not just the kids, especially it's the parents and others like, regulators and also toy industry. Many people can help that we have a better environment and also better health for our kids and ourselves. For the parents, I think they have a huge role to play here. They can watch out for the toys and the labels saying that certain harmful chemicals are not found in new toys. So parents can watch the labels and see, they are phthalate-free, for example, or lead-free, these are chemicals that can harm children's health and also adults' health, actually. Parents can also put toys that we don't use anymore in the basement or elsewhere, instead of leaving them all in the children's rooms. Why is that relevant? Because I told earlier, most of the chemicals can migrate out of the toys into the indoor air, and then we breathe them. That's really a most important pathway. So if we put these toys away that we don't play with, then we don't breathe these chemicals coming out of them. And parents can also open the windows every day, so to remove the chemicals that move from the toys into the air. So there are a lot of things parents can do on a simple basis.
Definitely, definitely. Developing countries have lesser regulations for toys, so would you think that children in these countries are at a high risk?
Yeah, that's a very general problem. And I said earlier that regulators are also in charge. So governments, policymakers, yes, kids in developing countries, I would say, have in general a higher risk than kids in developed countries. One of the main reasons here is that these countries have poorer regulations. But another main reason is that developed countries, they send usually much of their trash back to the developing countries. All the trash, all the things we don't need anymore, that is not just toys, that is old electronics and other waste, we ship them back to developing countries. And many poor kids in these developing countries, they play on the dump sites where the trash is really dumped. And then on these dump sites, many chemicals migrate out of this trash because it's broken open. So the chemicals migrate out a lot. You have metals and other toxic chemicals on the waste sites, and many kids that are poor play on these dump sites. So of course they can get sick there. So yes, in general, kids in developing countries have a higher risk of getting exposed to toxic chemicals for different reasons. And we should really help mitigating that.
Yeah, but one thing I would say to the leaders of developing countries and plastic plants and everything, like, they should stop sending it to developing countries. I mean, it's unfair. They are countries as well. They have their own problems and they can't deal with developed countries' trash. So what's the best way forward for the toy industry to do more to protect our health and the environment?
That's a very good question, because it's not just the kids themselves and the parents which toys to buy, and it's also not just due to the regulators which toys should be allowed and which chemicals. Is really also a big role that the toy industry itself has to play and can play in improving the safety of the kids. So the toy industry, for example, should invest more in creative minds like yours that find new solutions where harmful chemicals are actually not needed, instead of only increasing profit for their own company, which is often, unfortunately, the main driver for many companies in the world. And it's in the end also good for their own kids, right? I mean, admit everyone who has kids, be it on the company or not, can benefit from that. The toy industry should also better listen to the many scientists that we have in the world that work on safety of kids, on health effects, on chemical safety and better design. And they should work together with these scientists to find the best possible toys that are the least harmful for the kids and for the environment. I believe that this will become really an advantage for the companies in the future, where we are more and more aware of health risks from harmful chemicals.
Yeah, so true. Toy industry does have a big role to play. We love getting advice from great minds like yours. Do you have any?
That's awesome that you say that. We all have advice. Some are better, some are worse. I think kids and their parents should reduce the overall amount of toys that they have in the first place. Instead, they should use their own minds and their own fantasy and play more together with each other, with other kids. I think playing with each other is really the biggest fun that we have. When I remember back when I was a kid, I can barely remember any of the toys I had, but I can remember all of my friends that I played with. So scientists on our side, because I do research on my end here with toys and chemicals and other things, scientists should stop to see kids as little humans. That's also a big problem right now. The body of a kid has a very different way of reacting to chemicals, right? It's not the same as what we as an adults do, but all the studies we use currently in the world are mostly from middle-aged male humans. That we cannot just scale down to a small kid. So we need more studies on how chemicals actually affect our children. That will really help us better predicting and the effects and protecting the kids, so they can spend a lot of healthy time to play with toys and, of course, with each other. That's my advice.
Yeah, thank you for being on my podcast, Dr. Peter Fantke.
Thank you so much, Siona. It was a great pleasure of mine.